I'm a 32-year-old woman named Hannah, and I've always been the kind of person who pays her own way. I grew up in a lower middle class part of Ohio with parents who taught me never to expect handouts. My mom worked two jobs, and my dad ran a struggling HVAC business. And from the time I was 16, I helped pay bills, buy groceries, and look after my younger siblings. So when I met my now husband, Ethan, who's 34 and grew up in a comfortable suburban Michigan family where his parents practically worshipped their children, it was a bit of a culture shock. His parents, Linda, 61, and Ray, 64, have always adored Ethan to a level that borders on comical. When Ethan got a B in college, Linda cried. When he bought his first car, Ray called him the breadwinner of the next generation. Meanwhile, I have always been polite, supportive, and helpful to them, but I could tell early on that I was not the person they imagined Ethan marrying. It wasn't overt hostility. It was more that tight smile Linda gives, the way she calls me sweetheart, with just enough patronization to make it sting. I didn't take it personally. Some people just don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need rescuing. Fast forward to last weekend. Ray's birthday was coming up, and Linda suggested a small family dinner. She said it would be casual, just the four of us, and that she found a cute little place downtown she'd been dying to try. She insisted she would handle the reservation and made a point of telling me, "Don't worry, honey, we'll be treating." We show up Saturday night to this upscale fusion steakhouse, the kind with $70 cocktails and $150 appetizers, and immediately I know something's off. At the table are three people I've never seen in my life. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, and an older man who looked like he was auditioning for the role of pretentious uncle. The younger woman waved at us excitedly and said, "You must be Ethan's wife. We've heard so much." And I could feel my internal alarms going off like a Vegas slot machine. Linda chirped, "Oh, didn't I tell you? This is Marcy, my coworker's daughter, her husband Trent, and this is Mr. Halper, my old boss. They were in the area, so I thought it'd be nice to invite them." She said it like she had just invited them to share fries, not a reservation at a place where a side of mashed potatoes costs $38. Dinner starts, drinks are ordered, then more drinks, then a bottle of wine that costs literally $4.20. I know because Mr. Halper bragged about picking the good one. Marcy ordered lobster, wagyu, and a sushi platter big enough to feed an entire PTA meeting. Trent ordered the same. Halper ordered some multi-course tasting experience like he was a judge on a cooking show. Meanwhile, Ethan and I ordered modestly because we are sane adults. I leaned toward Linda and said quietly, "This is a lot. Are you sure you're paying for everybody?" Linda gave me a thin smile and said, "Well, sweetheart, we'll figure it out at the end," which in mother-in-law language translates to, "I have already planned something awful and you won't like it. Bill comes, $1.1846.72. I swear the numbers physically punched me in the throat. Linda looked around the table with this fake pleasant tone and said, "Well, since we all shared such a lovely meal, how about we split it evenly?" Evenly, between 8 people, which would have made sense if the strangers hadn't eaten like they were filming a Food Network marathon. But Linda immediately looked at me, not her husband, not the 3 random freeloaders, not even her precious son, just me, and she said, "I assume you and Ethan can cover your half, sweetheart. You two make the most money." That was not true. They think I make a lot because I have a corporate job, but Ethan and I live on a tight financial plan because we're trying to pay off student loans and save for a house. Meanwhile, Ray collects boats the way normal people collect fridge magnets. I said, "We'll pay for what we ordered. I'm not paying for strangers who ordered half the ocean." Linda's smile evaporated. Ray's eyebrows shot up. "Mr. Halper did that offended cough old men do when they want everyone to know they're important." Linda hissed, "Hannah, don't be difficult." Ethan, to his credit, backed me up immediately and said, "Mom, we didn't agree to pay for this." Marcy and Trent suddenly found their phones very interesting. In the end, Ethan and I paid $160, what our food actually cost, plus tip. Ray begrudgingly covered the rest, muttering that he didn't raise his son to be selfish. I almost laughed out of sheer disbelief. We left with Linda giving me the silent treatment so icy it could have cooled the wine bill. Then this morning happened. I woke up to 32 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and a group chat explosion where Linda was hysterically typing paragraphs like she was live tweeting her own meltdown. Stuff like, "I can't believe you embarrassed us," and "How could you humiliate Ray in front of his colleagues?" and "You're tearing this family apart over a dinner." My personal favorite was, "Money shouldn't matter between family." which is rich coming from someone who wanted me to pay nearly $1,000 for three strangers' feast. Ethan texted the group, Mom, stop, you ambushed us, and we're not discussing this until you calm down. She responded by calling him brainwashed. So, yes, that's my Sunday. 2 days after the restaurant fiasco, things had quieted down just enough for me to think Linda might have run out of emotional ammunition. The group chat had been silent for almost 24 hours, which in her world was the equivalent of a ceasefire treaty drafted by exhausted diplomats. I thought she would take some time to regroup, process the embarrassment of being confronted with her own ridiculous plan, and find a more subtle way to reset the relationship. Instead, she invited Ethan to lunch to talk privately. The message came while he was brushing his teeth before work. He held his phone like it had grown teeth. I read the notification over his shoulder and instantly felt that instinctual tightening in my chest, the one that tells you trouble is loading in the background like a Windows update. He sighed and asked what I thought he should do, and I told him to go, not because I thought anything good would come from it, but because I genuinely wanted to see how far she was willing to escalate this circus of delusion. A person who ambushes you with a three-stranger dinner bill and then spends the next 24 hours in meltdown mode is not someone who retreats quietly. She was gearing up for something, and I wanted to know what the next act looked like. He left for lunch the next day, looking like someone reporting for jury duty. I spent the afternoon imagining the scene playing out. Linda arriving 10 minutes early, rehearsing her lines, trying to summon just the right level of martyrdom. She would speak with trembly hands, she would dab non-existent tears, she would take pauses so long you could hear cutlery clinking 3 tables away, she would make sweeping statements about family unity and loyalty, words she only dusted off when she wanted something. He came home 3 hours later looking like someone who had just been told Santa was not real, the tooth fairy was a fraud, and the Easter Bunny had been lying about taxes. He sat on the couch and let out a sound that hovered somewhere between a groan and a sigh of disbelief. When I asked him how lunch went, he put his head in his hands and explained that Linda cried the entire time. Not once, not at the end, the entire time. She apparently started the moment he sat down, tears streaming like she had been storing them in a hydration pack. She kept saying that she did not know this woman her son married, that I had changed him, that he was choosing the wrong family. She told him she thought he would always put them first, and she could not understand how he could stand by a woman who coldly embarrassed them in front of guests. Guests. As if she had not invited random people she barely knew, as if she had not set the entire scenario up herself, as if I had burst into that restaurant and flipped a table while shouting accusations. She transformed her own stunt into a tragedy she had been victimized by. It was almost impressive. If she ever wanted a career in Hollywood, she could walk in with that performance alone. Then Ethan told me the part that made my jaw tighten so sharply I thought a molar might crack. Linda had said that because of my behavior, because I embarrassed the family and showed what she referred to as a lack of respect for elders, she feared we would not let them see their future grandbabies. The grandbabies we do not have. The grandbabies Ethan and I have not even discussed a timeline for. The grandbabies that currently exist only in her imagination, where they probably live in monogrammed onesies and spend weekends in the lavish nursery she has mentally decorated without our input. She said she could already feel that I would keep her from them, and she cried harder as she said it, clutching tissues dramatically while Ethan tried to explain that no such conflict has ever existed because no such babies exist. But the real kicker, the part that made my laughter burst out of me later like someone had shaken a soda can, was when Linda told Ethan that she expected me to apologize to Mr. Halper for what she called demeaning his generosity. Generosity. A word that could not be more mismatched to that man even if someone stitched it on the back of a leather jacket and forced him to wear it ironically. The man who ordered 2 entrees, 3 sides, and a bottle of wine so expensive it should have included stock options. The man who bragged about every item he selected like he was auditioning for a food critic role. The man who, I suspect, would not even recognize me if he walked past me again unless I was holding a menu over my head like a flag. She wanted me to apologize to him. When Ethan told me this, I laughed so hard, my ribs actually hurt. I had to lean forward with my hand pressed against my stomach because the sheer absurdity of the request felt physically unbelievable. The whole thing was so twisted that my brain rejected it like a bootleg DVD. Ethan watched me laugh with this look of exhausted relief because he knew that if I had reacted any other way, the next chapter of this saga would involve screaming into a pillow or packing a suitcase. I asked him if he told her no, And he said that he did. He said he told her there would be no apology, that I had done nothing wrong, and that the entire situation had been inappropriate from the start. But he also admitted something important, sitting across from her, watching her spiral into dramatic despair over a dinner bill she manufactured. He finally saw it clearly. He saw the manipulation, he saw the theatrics, he saw how she bends reality to fit the role she wants to play, and it scared him a little. By the time he finished recounting the entire ordeal, he looked both lighter and more burdened. Lighter because he knew standing up to her was the right thing, but burdened because admitting your mother is capable of this level of delusion is not something that comes naturally to someone raised as the golden child. Ethan grew up believing his mother's emotional intensity was a form of love. Now he was realizing it might actually be a form of control. I told him again that there would be no apology. He said he completely agreed. At this point, even he realized his mother might actually be losing touch with reality. Linda had not called, had not texted, had not sent any dramatic paragraphs to the group chat, which made me suspect she was either regrouping or attempting to build a new storyline in which she was the tragic heroine wronged by her insensitive daughter-in-law. Whatever she was doing, I could feel her plodding through the ether. Then, out of nowhere, we heard from Linda's sister, Aunt Carol. The woman is effectively the family's unofficial communication headquarters. If you ever need to know who is mad at whom, who got a new car, who said something scandalous at Thanksgiving in 1997, or who has recently undergone a personality meltdown, Aunt Carol is the person who will tell you before you even ask. Her favorite hobby is staying updated on every family conflict within a 3-state radius, and Linda has a long history of oversharing with her under the belief that Carol is a vault. What Linda always forgets is that this vault has a busted lock and a neon sign that says, ask me anything. Carol called Ethan because she had reached the point where keeping the information to herself was physically impossible. She launched into her explanation with the eagerness of someone who had been sitting on explosive gossip long enough to develop symptoms. The first thing she reported was that Linda had been telling everyone in the extended family that I refused to help pay for Ethan's birthday dinner. Ethan's, not Ray's. Ethan, who was not the birthday boy, had not been the focus of the dinner and had not even been the person who initiated it. She had rewritten the entire evening to make it sound like I ruined a celebration specifically for my own husband. She was telling cousins, uncles, distant relatives with whom she only exchanged Christmas cards, and one aunt who lives in Florida and remembers nothing correctly, even on good days. According to Carol, the story making its rounds was that Ethan's selfish wife had refused to pitch in for a birthday dinner, leaving poor Ray standing there mortified. The absurdity was so outrageous, I had to sit down to absorb it. I imagined Linda reshaping events like clay, swapping names, swapping motives, rearranging facts until she was innocent and I was the villain, a process she probably performed with the intensity of a novelist under deadline, and the family, who already saw Ethan as the golden child, and Linda as the fragile mother who could do no wrong, eagerly accepted whatever version of events she fed them. The real story, the one involving a group of freeloading strangers and an attempted financial ambush, had somehow been transformed into a tale in which I maliciously refused to pay for my husband's special celebration. But the revelations did not stop there. Carol's voice took on a different tone as she continued. The tone someone gets when they know they are about to deliver information that will cause permanent structural damage to the listener's worldview. She explained that Linda had also told several relatives the real purpose behind the dinner ambush, the part she had conveniently skipped when speaking to us. Linda had wanted to show me off as a high-earning corporate daughter-in-law to impress Mr. Halper. She described it as if I were an accessory, a designer bag she planned to display at the table. Her plan was that when the bill arrived, I would sweep in gracefully and cover a massive portion without blinking, creating the illusion that she had a financially powerful daughter-in-law who fit perfectly into the image of success she wanted to project. And the reason for this spectacle? Linda had hoped that impressing Halper would help Ray land a project contract he had been chasing for months. She thought flaunting my career, my salary, and my supposed financial comfort would signal to Halper that their family was influential, connected, or at the very least successful enough to be worth doing business with. I sat there listening to Carol's words, and every piece clicked into place like a catastrophic puzzle. The strangers, the restaurant selection, the extravagant orders, the fake generosity, the attempt to pin the bill on us, the meltdown afterward, all of it had been part of one elaborate networking stunt designed to present me as a walking, talking financial flex. The worst part was that Linda never actually cared about me paying the bill because the meal was expensive. She only cared because she thought my doing so would elevate her social standing and make Ray look more prosperous. She wanted me to perform wealth, not possess it. She wanted me to be impressive, not comfortable. The dinner had never been about celebrating Ray's birthday. It had never been about family bonding. It had never even been about Halper's presence. It had been about Linda's obsession with status and her belief that I existed as a tool to enhance it. I sat there frozen, absorbing every detail, and for the first time since the whole situation began, I felt something deeper than annoyance. I felt insult on a generational level. I thought about my parents working late nights to make ends meet. I thought about my childhood spent stretching grocery budgets and learning responsibility long before most kids my age even knew what an electric bill was. I thought about every hour I worked to build my career, every dollar I saved, every sacrifice made to get where I am, and it all came down to this. Linda had treated me like a prop in a performance she had crafted to impress someone else. I swear my ancestors felt the insult. After the truth about Linda's networking ambush came out, thanks to Aunt Carol, who was honestly performing a public service, we spent a few more days processing everything. The shock had simmered into a steady determination. Ethan kept repeating the same line under his breath whenever he thought I was not listening, that he could not believe his mother had used me as social currency. I think it was the first time in his life he had looked at her through a lens not softened by childhood worship. He was seeing her strategy, not her sentiment, and that clarity was uncomfortable for him, but it was necessary. Eventually, the situation reached a tipping point where letting it linger would simply give Linda more room to reinvent the story into something even more absurd. Ethan suggested sitting down with his parents, not at their house, not at ours, and definitely not at a restaurant Linda could manipulate. He chose a local coffee shop with bright lighting, busy foot traffic, and menus where the most expensive item was a seasonal latte topped with cinnamon foam. I immediately agreed because it was neutral, public, and completely impossible for Linda to turn into another luxury spectacle. When we arrived, Linda had already taken a seat, arms crossed tightly, mouth pressed into a thin line. Ray sat beside her with his usual confused father expression, the one he wore whenever family conflict exceeded the emotional complexity of football scores. Linda did not even wait for us to sit before launching into her opening. She said she hoped we were ready to make things right, with a tone implying she expected us to offer her a ceremonial surrender. She delivered it like she was giving us the chance to apologize for an offense we had never committed. I felt a strange calm wash over me. It was the same calm I felt as a teenager when confronting overdue electric bills or negotiating with insurance companies on behalf of my parents. It was the calm of someone who had dealt with real adversity, not the manufactured drama of someone who wanted to audition for Matriarch of the Year. I told her no, I was not ready to make things right, but I was ready to be clear, and I was crystal clear. I told her I would never attend another event where surprise guests were added. I said I would not be financially responsible for strangers. I said I would not apologize for refusing to be manipulated. And I explained that if she wanted a relationship with her future grandchildren, she needed to learn boundaries now, before those children existed, before she attempted to leverage them the way she had attempted to leverage me. It was not a threat. It was a statement of reality. Ray tried to interrupt with something predictable about the importance of family, but I did not let him derail the point. I told him family does not lie to each other, and they certainly do not create orchestrated financial ambushes disguised as dinners. I said trust is not built by theatrics or manipulation. It is built by honesty, respect, and accountability, and Linda had violated all three. Ethan supported me without hesitation. He told them that if this happened again, anything like it, any deception, any attempt to use us as props or wallets or pawns, we would step back completely, not out of punishment, but out of self-protection. It was the most firm and decisive I had ever heard him be with his parents. His voice did not shake. He did not look away. It was the sound of a man choosing his own household over the one he had been born into. That was the moment Linda went silent. Not her usual icy silence designed to guilt-trip everyone into begging for forgiveness. This silence was different. It landed with weight. It was the silence of someone finally realizing that the strategy she had depended on for decades, emotional chaos mixed with martyrdom, was no longer effective. She had expected resistance, but not a united front. She had expected a crack she could push into, not a wall. Her eyes shifted between us like she was recalculating every angle she thought she understood. Ray was still trying to process the idea that his son had set a boundary that did not include a loophole. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt the dynamic shift. Not in a triumphant way, in an honest way, a necessary way. When we stood to leave, Ethan reached for my hand. He squeezed it with a warmth that said he saw me, appreciated me, and understood the gravity of what had just happened. In the parking lot, he quietly told me he was proud of me. It was not dramatic, it was not emotional fanfare, it was genuine, and it hit me harder than any confrontation had. That night, long after the conversation had settled into memory, Linda sent a message. It was short, brittle, and so stiffly phrased it might as well have been written on starched stationery. It said she understood. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a brittle concession, the kind you send when you know pushing further will only end worse. But I did not expect an apology. I did not expect accountability. What mattered was that the boundary had finally landed. And not lightly. It landed with the force of a brick tossed clean through a window, loud enough to be heard, clear enough to be seen, impossible to ignore. So that is where things stand now. The in-laws are behaving, at least for the moment. The atmosphere around them feels unusually careful, like they are stepping around the edges of a line that they know exists for the first time. And as for me, I am keeping my wallet, my time, my energy, and my emotional availability far, far away from any event where Linda has even a whisper of influence. And honestly, that is the happiest ending this story could possibly have.